It finally seems as though we are getting to the end of Rudy Giuliani's political life. He has now been ordered to pay $148 million in a defamation verdict related to statements related to all of the nonsense surrounding the 2020 presidential election, which Rudy Giuliani pursued at the beck and call of Donald Trump. This is not ending well for Rudy. And you will remember that at one point, Rudy Giuliani was the much respected and much liked mayor of New York City during 9/11, squandering that increasingly over the years by making more and more unhinged statements. A very strange noise there. Until ultimately he went full MAGA and started working for Trump and got involved in perpetuating lies about the 2020 election. This is where we are today. Reuters reports Giuliani ordered to pay $148 million to Georgia election workers in defamation trial. Rudy must pay more than $148 million in damages to two former Georgia election workers he defamed through false accusations that they helped rig the 2020 election against Donald Trump, according to what a jury decided. The jury in federal court in D.C. says Giuliani owes the workers Wandria Moss and her mother Ruby Freeman roughly $73 million to compensate them for the reputational and emotional harm they suffered, and another $75 million to punish the former Trump lawyer and one-time New York mayor for his conduct. Rudy Giuliani making a statement outside of the courthouse, much made, by the way, of the guy to Rudy's right, our left, sort of over Rudy's shoulder, an individual believed to be one of Rudy's lawyers with one of the strangest haircuts we have ever seen. The gentleman looking disoriented and confused at different points during Rudy Giuliani's public statements. Really just a sidebar here, but Rudy saying the entire proceedings are just ridiculous. Take a listen.
Of course, there's very little I can say right now. I have to analyze this. Obviously, possibly we'll move for a new trial. Certainly we'll appeal. The absurdity of the number merely underscores the absurdity of the entire proceeding, where I've not been allowed to offer one single piece of evidence in defense.
Right.
Of which I have a lot. So I am quite confident when this case gets before a fair tribunal, it'll be reversed so quickly, it'll make your head spin. And the absurd number that just came in will help that, actually.
Yeah. Rudy's argument that $148 million is so ridiculous based on the facts that it will easily be overturned as soon as they can get this appealed. A reporter asking Rudy, do you regret some of the comments that the women received as far as the jury is concerned, as a result of the claims Rudy made? A lot of the argument here is Rudy made claims about these women, and then as a result, they got death threats, etc. And Rudy goes, oh, the comments are terrible, but it just is not my fault. It has nothing to do with me.
Do you have any regrets about
That's all I have to say. I have.
Do you have any regrets about some of the comments that you received?
We gotta
Do you have any regrets about some of the comments that the women received?
Well, of course, the comments they received I had nothing to do with. Those comments are abominable. They're deplorable. No defense to it, but I receive comments like that every day.
Really?
Different kinds of things.
Rudy is getting racial slurs shouted at him and also threatened with being lynched. I didn't know that.
Represented clients who have gotten that from the other side. This is a terrible part of our political system. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, and conservatives all get that. My comments weren't that. And I think that was also a very unfair part of it, because my comments had no connection at all to those. There were thousands of things in the press about this, of which mine were a small amount. There's no way to say that my comments connected to that, but that's going to be part of what we'll get to litigate.
Well, that's what the jury found, and that's an important element to this. Rudy asked, do you believe the things you said about these two women to have been truthful? That's an interesting question.
I believe that what you
said about these two women in the wake of the 2020 election was truthful?
Do you still believe these claims?
Do you still believe those
I have no doubt. I have no doubt that my comments were made and they were supportable and are supportable today.
Still.
I just did not have an opportunity to present the evidence that we offered. Did you notice we were not allowed to put in one piece of evidence in defense? Do you also realize that liability is not based on any trial? Liability is based on her disagreement with me on discovery, which is absurd.
Why didn't you take a stand?
Because I believe the judge was threatening me with the strong possibility that I'd be held in contempt or that I'd even be put in jail.
So listen, the people who advocate for personal responsibility all day, every day, very quickly turning into the victims. On his apparent podcast later that night, Rudy putting together a very strange statement and really not taking this well.
And every ruling, my lawyer will tell you, went against us. And she certainly gave the impression to the jury that she sided with one side. No reason to get into all the interruptions and the help for the witnesses on the other side and the charge that virtually told them to crucify me. and her clear delight when it came in. This woman conducted an abomination of a trial. If you think the verdict of $147 million is absurd, which it is.
Right.
To any observer, the amount is punitive, malicious, and absurd.
All right. So it's all unfair, as you can see here, and they are all the worst victims treated so unfairly. Now, I want to address what is increasingly becoming a broader argument about these defamation cases from the right. This applies to Trump. This applies to the Fox News defamation case, Rudy Giuliani, and others. Charlie Kirk, a right-winger, put out the following tweet. He said, "Free speech has a cost. Alex Jones, $1 billion. Tucker Carlson and Fox, $787.5 million. Rudy Giuliani, $148 million for wanting to ensure fair elections. Are you next?" And this is part of the argument that free speech is being criminalized and restricted when there is a defamation verdict. It's really important to understand a couple of things. First of all, when these right-wingers insist that the left has criminalized speech, defamation is almost always a civil matter. So by definition, we're not talking about a criminal issue. Secondly, when we are talking about individual plaintiffs bringing forward these cases, that's not the government. And so that's another important aspect to this. It is not the government and it's not criminal. So how we can say the government has criminalized speech in the First Amendment, it doesn't really make any sense. What we're talking about is civil liability for the things you say. The purpose of a defamation of defamation law is to balance two interests: the right to freedom of speech and the right not to have one's reputation unjustly harmed with untrue statements. And so defamation law, defamation statutes, by virtue of how they are written and with exceptions when you're attacking a public person, and the comments must be untrue and they must have been made publicly and they must be damaging to the individual about which they are, all of those things. Defamation statutes recognize free speech is critical, but it's not absolute, and we have these other rights and responsibilities as well. Many legal systems offer greater protection when you're talking about public figures or matters of public interest. That makes sense. This is the opposite. This isn't, if somebody goes on the show and says, hey, you know what? Even when people make false claims about Trump, which happens all the time, Trump's a public figure. And to say that some random false claim about Trump is damaging to him is not going to pass the sniff test. On the other hand, when Rudy Giuliani, as a public figure, weaponizes his speech, untrue speech, against two private individuals, all of a sudden, these defamation statutes are at play. So there is a burden of proof that is there, that is appropriate when it comes to defamation. Speech is not being criminalized through defamation statutes, especially since they are almost always civil. And this is the argument that is part of we are victims. We are victims at the end of the day. Bad day for Rudy. This may be it for Rudy's political career. If you or a parent are starting to lose your hearing, you're not alone. About 48 million Americans have some hearing loss, and only about 20% of those who would benefit from a hearing aid actually use one. Our sponsor, MD Hearing, makes FDA-registered rechargeable hearing aids that cost just a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. MD Hearing's new Neo model costs less than 10% what you'll pay for traditional marked-up hearing aids. I have a close family friend who's been using MD Hearing for a long time now. I ran into her the other day, having a great experience with MD Hearing. She loves how MD Hearing has audiologists on staff to help her calibrate the device. She says it works better than anything she's ever used. MD Hearing was founded by an ENT surgeon who saw that many of his patients needed hearing aids, could not afford them. And so his mission was to develop a quality hearing aid that anyone could afford. MD Hearing offers a 45-day risk-free trial with a 100% money-back guarantee. You can buy with confidence. And if you're still on the fence about MD Hearing, they were just selected to be the hearing aid supplier for top Medicare Advantage plans. It's just a brand you can trust. Go to mdhearing.com and use the code PACMAN to get a pair for just $297. The link is down below.